When a couple decides to divorce, their pension situation isn't likely to be the first thing that they think about. After all, unless you're already drawing a pension, you probably think of it as a future, not current income, which doesn't count. But of course, it does. Pensions have a capital value, and in some cases, this can be pretty substantial. This isn't something that you could ignore, as Julia Robson is going to explain. So, Julia, your pension is yours no matter what. Is that right?
That's not necessarily the case when you're in a situation where a couple are divorcing. The pension is generally the second largest asset within a family's finances after the matrimonial or family home. It's always very important to consider pensions within the terms of any financial negotiations following the breakdown of a relationship or a marriage, because pensions can form such a huge part of the assets. So they do fall within what we would call the matrimonial pot, so that they are available for division between the parties. Since 2000, it has been possible for the courts to order what's called a pension sharing order to effectively split a person's pension on divorce.
So how might a pension be divided up?
There are several ways for a pension to be divided up. The most common approach is to look at a pension sharing order, and since December 2000, it has been possible for pensions to be split on divorce, which effectively means that we look at the pension pot and then a pension sharing order is made against a person's pension pot, and what we call pension credits are transferred out of the pension, and sometimes it's possible to transfer to an external pension, or sometimes those pension credits are retained within the pension fund. It very much depends on the type of pension. Alternatively, another common approach is to look at what's called pension offsetting, which is where we look at the value of the pension and then look at the value of the other assets, because pension assets are never looked at without looking at all of the matrimonial assets within a potential settlement. Offsetting is where you look at the value of a pension, but perhaps a person decides that they would rather offset that pension claim against another asset. For example, perhaps take a greater share of the family home.
Okay, so what about a pension that was started a long time before a marriage? Is it fair to share that up as well?
The Pension Advisory Group gave guidance in 2019 to say that if you were looking at what we call a needs-based case, where we were determining the financial issues, very much taking into consideration the parties' needs, as we always do, that in some cases, on a needs-based case, a fair approach may well be to look at the whole of the pension, not just the pension that accrued during the marriage. It may be in certain circumstances, it might be possible to look at the pension that accrued before the marriage and perhaps ring-fence that, and for that not to fall part of the settlement. But the overall approach that always has to be taken in these cases is to look at fairness and to achieve a fair outcome for both parties. And you may find that in some cases there may be one party who's perhaps given up work to become a primary carer for the children. So when the parties separate, they may be at a disadvantage because they've not been able to contribute to their pensions. So therefore it may be appropriate to look at the entire pension in order to make sure a fair outcome is achieved.
So there is some room for manoeuvre then, it's not just black and white?
No, it's a very discretionary area of the law, and we've already talked about seeking a fair outcome for both parties and balancing parties' needs against resources. It's very important from the outset, though, because it is such a discretionary area of the law, to take specialist advice. So as family lawyers, we would involve specialist advisors such as actuaries, possibly financial advisors, possibly accountants, to make sure that we can get all the information that we need in order to advise our clients properly from the outset of a case, because there is this wide discretion with how the courts may approach such a case.
Are pensions automatically included in financial proceedings?
They should be, is the short answer. But sadly, in a lot of cases, they are not. Specialist family lawyers should always, from the outset of a case, identify and value pensions. And we've just mentioned they should be valued properly. All pensions are quite different, or there's a lot of different types of pensions. So it's very important to get a proper valuation so that you know what the true value of that asset is when you're entering into negotiations on behalf of a client.
Why would someone need specialist advice when they're getting divorced?
For those very reasons. It's a very complex area of the law. A specialist family lawyer is able to provide advice and an indication from the early outset of the case to make sure that the client's fully aware of their position in relation to what could and may happen to their pension within financial remedy proceedings, or indeed within negotiations leading to a financial settlement.
Okay, and what happens once the financial order is finalised?
Once we have what's called the sealed financial order from the court, the family lawyer would send this to the pension provider. The pension provider then has 4 months from the date of the order to implement that order. So what that means is that the order is effective as at the date of implementation. So the pension pot will effectively be shared from the date of implementation of that order. And I think that is a fact that quite a lot of people are unaware of when looking at pensions on divorce, because you can actually have the benefit of that pension asset and you can have an order made in relation to that asset prior to the person who has the pension pot reaching retirement age, which again is why you need specialist advice early on.
Sure. Well, Juliet, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
As we've heard, if you're going through a divorce, dividing up any pensions you have will usually be one of the largest financial decisions you need to make. So it's important to get specialist legal advice.